Hey, what's up everyone? Alex here. By now, you've probably seen plenty of headlines talking about how Eternights is pretty mid. And if you're wondering where I fall on that spectrum, I'm on the side of, it's got some really cool ideas, but very shaky execution. The problem with saying that, and only that, is that it doesn't really describe how it feels to actually play the game, and instead of actually taking down the game a notch or two, and a lot of people have already done that, I'm the kind of person who likes examining why things didn't work as well as they should, and kind of talking about it. So this video is going to focus a lot about that. I want to just jump right into the heart of the problem, which is its action gameplay. As a turn-based JRPG fan, I am intensely critical of real-time action in games as I get older and a lot less quicker with my reaction. Conversely, some of you turn-based fans love being able to take your time with your actions, which to me translates to a desire for gameplay that can be easily understood and reacted upon, like the Souls games. The problem with Eternights is that it doesn't really quite know where to fall on that spectrum. Should it be paced like character action games like Devil May Cry? Or should it have players react to things like in Souls games? What you essentially get is a game that attempts to blend both styles of play, while also streamlining combos down to a few button presses, while also trying to insert some depth into its progression. This results in an action combat that has questionable dodge timing windows, a repetitive feeling combo system, and progression that doesn't feel satisfying, which only serves as a means to gate cool features. And given its short 10+ hour playtime, which to be fair is a length expected of Devil May Cry games, it made me ask the question of why Eternights' progression systems don't feel as meaningful as the aforementioned series of games. This progression system is also tied to a social link type system, which I'll get into by the way. One of the things that I mentioned in my preview of the game is how long it takes your character to pull their sword out, which was a huge red flag for me. In many other action games, pressing the attack button immediately whips out your sword, whip, axe, or whatever your chosen weapon is. That's because in most action games, you want players to trust that your character will do what you need them to do with a press of a button, with very little delay. It's only in Souls-likes that you get this tiny delay window when you start a swing, and even then, it's still faster than unsheathing your weapon in Eternights. And yes, I know this is just one action, and to be fair, the rest of the level will have your character's sword out after unsheathing it. But that one design choice says a million things about where the developer's focus is when it comes to designing Eternights gameplay. I also want to point out the very small timing window that each enemy has. I'm playing this game on the normal difficulty setting, and while it's not a terribly difficult game, I find the dodge timings in Eternights to be a bit variable, which often requires you to premeditate or wait when your opponent attacks next. For example, there's this businessman enemy archetype that just does a quick dodgeable swing when you get in their range that you just simply have to dodge right away, along with other enemies that have their own weird patterns that require you to actually wait until they make their first move. This, of course, reminded me a lot of how I play Souls-likes, where I study an enemy's movement and then react accordingly. The problem with all of this lies when there are multiple enemies in the same area, and with how varied the dodge window timings are, oftentimes what you think is a perfect dodge doesn't really register that way at all. Some enemies have dodge timings closer to the start of the attack, which robs you of the feeling that you executed the dodge well despite the game's feedback. This develops a very tiny amount of doubt in your head and makes you question if somehow you're playing the game properly. Such is the risk of not being able to ground the action to something familiar. This didn't need a deeper social link system. Now, I understand that that's the pitch here, but keeping track of all these different nuances and stats is just a bit too tedious for a game that ends quickly. Like, for Persona, sure, it's 100 hours, of course you're gonna want to engage with it, but to spend all this time in a 10 to 14 hour game seems a bit silly. Also, I feel like this puts too much emphasis on the perks of this social link type system rather than what it was really designed for. Like, to me, and I'm pretty sure for many of you out there, the best parts of the social link / confidant system in Persona are learning about the interpersonal relationships between the characters. And when I frame it that way, this isn't about the perks at all. The perks act as a value add to encourage people to actually engage in the character development. So trying to put more gameplay into the social link system actually takes away from the character building that's actually happening there. The next thing is writing. And by that, I'm not just necessarily talking about a better story, but just an awareness of what the writing is and where it's at in the story. A really good example of this is Chani, who is your best friend, one of the best people in the world. The voice actor does a really fantastic job of elevating Chani to this really fun-loving guy, really easygoing and everything, maybe a bit paranoid here and there, but overall really nice dude. So when he turns around and becomes this dude, that just took me by surprise. I was like, what are you doing, man? Why are you all of a sudden this really unfun dude? Like, what happened? And what's also really weird about this is that the further you play past that part, all of a sudden, Chani turns into this okay guy again. This begs the question of, like, why did you even have that part? Was it necessary to begin with? Why couldn't he just be supportive? Additionally, there are other times in the game that just move way too quickly. Like, I remember at the beginning where they established a premise and then they move you all the way to the bunkers. And I was like, wow, that is so jarring. Like, you're not gonna show me like what happens in between? Like, you're just gonna gloss over that? And that's really what I mean is, like, in this particular case, the developer wanted to move things along, but didn't really want to dwell in some of the smaller details that could have been explored, right? Like, what if during that time frame that you were in the shelter, this could have been like a moment where you could develop characters? Like, this isn't just a stagnant moment where nothing happens. And last but not least, I think the biggest problem of Eternights is that it tried to do everything all at once, and that's not a good formula for success. Typically, when you're making games like this, you take one really good idea, and then you iterate on it, and then just kind of make that the best ever. Because when you try to do so many things at once, it actually takes away focus from the parts of the game that actually need it. So, for example, there is just this random part in the game that asks you to do a DDR thing with Yuna. But the problem is that it wasn't executed well, and you'll probably fail a few times because they didn't even give you instructions on how it works. Because they just want you to play that section because it kind of changes up the gameplay. There are also parts of the game where you play these sequences that are kind of little mini games here and there. There's even a social activity that you can do where you pick a location and then you have to find this item that may or may not be at that location, which to me is just kind of a waste of time, and it really doesn't do much other than giving you something to do. Which again underscores this whole idea of, what is this game really? Is this like an object finding game? Is this a social game like a VN? Is this supposed to be focused on action? Because if it is supposed to be focused on action, there's certainly other aspects of the game that are kind of trying to fight that, which makes it a bit frustrating, because had the developer just focused on the action, just the action and the storytelling, I feel like this could have been an incredible game. My final thoughts on Eternights is that I wanted to love this game. This is one of those games that I was looking forward to ever since I played the demo during the beginning of the year. And I was expecting so much growth from that. A lot of feedback coming from the people playing the demo, maybe changing things here and there. But as it stands, Eternights right now is exactly the demo that I played months ago, which is to say that it had a lot of promise and it had some really cool ideas. So it was a little bit disappointing to me to realize that some of these ideas were not fully fleshed out in the final product. The reason why I presented it this way is so that the developers could watch what I created and get some really good feedback for their next game. Or better yet, if they actually decided to just gut the action gameplay of Eternights and change it into something better. And wouldn't that be amazing if they decided, you know what, this guy's right, we need better focus on the action. And what if they did that? That would be really amazing, not just for myself, but also for anybody who had been looking forward to the game, and for people who were just waiting in the wings to see how people thought of it. But anyways, guys, the game is out today. but I want to hear your thoughts on it. And again, I want to thank the folks at Eternights for providing me with this game code. But anyways, if you did buy the game, let me know what you think in the comments below. And for the folks who were on the fence or weren't really picking up the game, I want to know what parts of the game that didn't click with you, either from this video or your personal experience playing it. At any rate, thank you very much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.